sharing and teaching this information with 3 other amazing women. And I'm hearing some feedback, so if you're off mute, put yourself on mute so that way everyone can hear. But I'm really grateful to share this information with 3 other amazing ladies that I also went to school with for regenerative detox and iridology. Carrie Drinkwine, Rita Fleming, and Mary Beth Fleming. And we all studied with Dr. Robert Morse. Oh, Carrie, put yourself on mute. We all studied with Dr. Robert Morse, and for those of you who don't know who he is a naturopath and chemist who has been helping people with regenerative healing for over 50 years.
Are you sure you don't want to hear this?
I do hear feedback. So if you find yourself off mute, just make sure you're muted so that way people can hear. And so our goal for you by the end of this class today is that you'll be empowered to understand your gut health more and your immune system more.
Everybody, you have controls.
Oh, I keep hearing feedback. I don't know who is unmuted. Carrie, if you want to check into that. Make sure your phone's muted so everyone can hear. And so our goal for you by the end of this class is that you have a better understanding and you can walk away with information that you can apply to use in your life right now. And so I'm going to go into my story and share a little bit of my experience and what I've experienced with my own gut health and how I've overcome that. And so it started back, when I was 6 years old. My parents got divorced, and I remember vividly sitting in my room crying, just wanting my mom to comfort me. And I didn't understand why she had to go. All as I knew is that she couldn't be home, and it was out of my control. And I didn't like that at all. And I ended up going to food for comfort to stuff and suppress those emotional feelings I was having. And that was my journey to where I started developing a lot more health complications from there. And so at a young age, I started to gain weight. I had digestive issues. I had a lot of bloating and congestion in my GI tract. I ended up with chronic ear infections as a child. And for those of you who are moms or have kids, it's hard to see your kids suffer, especially if, you feel like it's out of your control. And what I wish I would have known that I know now is somebody explaining to me the type of foods I was eating was causing more congestion and mucus in my body, which was therefore creating a nice host for that bacteria or virus to thrive. And so that's why I was getting a lot of chronic ear infections from the congesting food I was growing up eating. And so my dad would let us eat whatever we wanted. And of course, a little kid is going to pick out the sugary foods, the processed foods, the packaged foods. And so I grew up on eating a lot of Little Debbie brownies and Oreo cookies and processed cereals, and was just started to become really addicted to sugar. And fast forward, and I wanted to share about antibiotics. And so I started taking antibiotics a lot because I got ear infections so often. And so that's kind of just like putting a Band-Aid over what's really happening. And so antibiotics stands for against life. And so it's killing all the good and the bad microbes and bacteria in my GI tract. And so as I got older, I continued eating, these types of foods, thinking I was doing my body good because I thought I was supposed to be eating dairy and I was supposed to be eating this high protein diets and all these foods that I was told were good for me for calcium. And so as I got older, I started to have more issues with bloating and constipation and excessive gas and just not feeling comfortable when I ate. And I felt a lot of pain when I would eat. And I was very insecure with how I looked in my own body and with all the weight gain I was having. And I didn't correlate or connect the dots at the time. And so as I wish I would have known this information. So if someone would have connected the dots of these products are causing more harm in your body, I would have wanted to make that choice to avoid that, so I didn't have to feel that pain of those ear infections and suffer with the bloating and the pain in my GI tract. And so I invite you to think about where in your life have you had digestive distress? Have you had you know, loose stools or constipation. Things that are related to the GI tract are colitis and Crohn's and IBS, ulcers. We hear a lot about people taking antacids to calm the acid down in the GI tract because their body's not producing enough hydrochloric acid on their own. I don't know how long I was muted for. Sorry about that. So like I was saying, I invite you to think about where in your life have you had different signs that maybe there was congestion or stagnation in the GI tract, or things weren't functioning optimally, whether it was loose stool or constipation or taking antacids, or we're hearing a lot more about people having to get their gallbladders removed and partial colons removal and appendix removed. And we can avoid these extremes if we understand what causes damage to the GI tract. And our body gives us so many signs and signals that things could be out of balance. And if someone would have connected these dots for me when I was younger, I could have avoided a lot of pain and suffering that I experienced throughout my life. And so our GI tract is 5 to 6 feet long. And when we start to ingest food that's very congesting and mucus forming, we can over time congest our GI tract. And so I grew up with the food pyramid, as many of us have, and seeing that food pyramid, thinking I went from all this processed food, let me eat more real whole food. So I started eating a lot of, my breakfast would be very big. It would be like eggs and toast and fruit and avocado and greens. And so I was thinking I was getting all these good nutrients in, but then I would have lunch and the food didn't digest properly. So I felt really full in my stomach, but it never went through. And then I had lunch and then I had dinner. And then I did this for many years. And eventually things got just so backed up in my colon that I wasn't able to function optimally. Like I started to have, chronic pain, and everything that we bring in affects all of our tissues in our body. So the chemistry that we ingest is so important in our GI tract, and our head sits right on top of it. And so if anyone has brain fog or memory issues, that's what I was having in my 20s. And our head sits right on top of that GI tract. And so we have this very intricate connection of the gut-brain connection. And when things are congested below, we can't think and think as optimally as we could if things were flowing and not stagnant. And so Dr. Bruce Lipton does a really great job explaining epigenetics and how you can take a healthy cell, a damaged cell, and put it in an environment that can help that thrive, and that cell will thrive. You could take that same damaged cell and put it in an environment that's not conducive to the environment, and it can go the opposite way. And so a teacher shared this with me as genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And so no matter what you've been genetically predisposed to, or how you grew up eating, or what your lifestyle was like up until now, things can still change, shift, and regenerate. And that's what I found in my body. When I started to understand this information, I realized I needed to change the environment. And I tried all these different diets and different things, trying to eat, like I said, more real whole foods, thinking that was the trick. But I was never getting to the root of what was really happening. And what I found was I had to get the waste out before I could bring things back into a balance. And so our GI tract is 80% of our immune system is in our GI tract, and 1/3 of our lymphatic system is in our GI tract. And so when we're looking at gut health, it's really important to look at the lymphatic system kidney connection health, because it's all connected. And so if we're not filtering our cellular waste through our kidneys, that can also be backing up in our GI tract. And our GI tract is 5 to 6 feet long, and it's this amazing food processing machine. And if we're putting a lot of complex chemistry in it and expecting it to run optimally, that's when things can start to break down. And what I found is what we don't eliminate, we accumulate. And so if no one has ever taken the time to cleanse our internal terrain, our internal GI tract, that's when things start to break down. And this happened, or I got this information about 5 years ago that really like clicked for me. Remember sitting at my sister's couch, and she was looking in my eyes, and she could see stuff happening in my GI tract. And I was like, that's what I feel like is the missing link. Like something's happening with what I'm eating, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And that's when she shared with me one of Dr. Robert Morse's videos, and he talked a lot about iridology, and I could see how I had issues with my GI tract in my eyes. And once I applied this life-changing information, I cleaned my GI tract out, cleaned my body out, and I was able to, my digestion got better. I didn't have the chronic constipation. The brain fog went away. My energy got better. And just like you see this like laundry list of symptoms that can happen when you take pharmaceutical medication, I felt like I had this laundry list of things that all got better as I started to clean my GI tract out in that way. And so I like to say, turn off the faucet while you mop up the floor. So stop bringing in the foods and things that are causing harm and congestion while you clean things up. So you want to bring in this alkalizing, hydrating chemistry in the body. And it's not the symptoms that are the enemies, it's they're sacred messengers to give us a clear look at where we need to take care of our own body. And so we need to make sure with digestive health is to have proper digestion, absorption, utilization, and elimination. And what I found out is I wasn't doing any of those optimally. I wasn't digesting what I was eating. I could feel food sitting in my stomach. I wasn't absorbing what I was eating, because we have these little villi that are in the intestinal tract that grab the nutrients. And when we eat a lot of gluten and processed foods, that mats those little villi down, so then you're not absorbing what you eat. And then I wasn't utilizing what I was eating because I wasn't absorbing it. And then I wasn't eliminating properly because I wasn't having bowel movements, as quickly as I was eating. And so it's important to make sure with gut health that we're having bowel movements equivalent to how many times we're eating. And so if somebody is not going to the bathroom every day, that's another sign that the GI tract needs to be cleaned out. And so with that, I will pass it on to Carrie, is going to explain this more in detail. And thank you everyone for listening. And I hope that this information can be helpful, that you can start applying and using right away. And I'll pass it along to Carrie. Carrie also has her master's in nutrition and also went to the same school, and she'll be sharing on more of the GI tract in detail. Well, thank you.
Hi everyone, and let's just make sure you guys all see the video and as the speaker. Okay, beautiful. All right, so I'm Carrie Drinkwine. Like Carrie said, I have an undergrad in nutrition science and master's in holistic nutrition, and then a detoxification certification as well in regenerative detox. And this is all of our combined passions, as we said at the beginning. So I'm just going to dive deeper into gut health, because this is actually probably one of my favorite topics. And the reason being is because it really is the very center of our being. And if we don't understand that connection between our brain health, our body health, like everything starts at the core of your being, which is your gut. Your gut is actually your brain. Your gut is your endocrine system. Your gut is your hormone system. So it does everything. And this is the part that people don't understand. We often think of our food or our gut as just like a processing food system, but it is so much more. So inside of our gut, we actually produce 80% of our body's serotonin, melatonin, norepinephrine, hormone function. Like everything is actually produced and made in the gut. And then those signals, and all of your neurotransmitters as well, are made in the gut, and they are communicated to the brain. So if you have poor gut health, you can expect brain fog, or like that inability to think of a word, or saying words incorrectly, or just feeling really tired. Like these are all signs that your gut is not in a good state. And like Carrie said, digestion, absorption, utilization, and elimination have to happen at all times in order for us to be in a state of cellular thriving. a state of cellular ATP. And digestion really starts in the mouth with our saliva enzymes. And I won't get deep into that right now, but we have two enzymes, ptyalin and ptyalin, that break down foods. And so your saliva is a really huge, important part of your digestion. And oftentimes our saliva actually has become quite acidic because of our gut flora. And our saliva needs to be alkaline, and we need to have ptyalin and we need to have ptyalin in our saliva in order to be able to break down glucose, fructose, galactose, etc. And then starches and complex fats. So if our gut is in a bad state and our saliva has become acidic, that's the first sign of health degeneration, and dry mouth will be a symptom of that. And so if you struggle with like chronic dry mouth, it's a sign that your saliva enzymes aren't working. So the very first step of digestion is down. The second step of digestion, as it goes into your body, is that our pancreas secretes insulin and amylase and digestive enzymes to break down the foods that we're eating. And then the third step in the digestion is it goes into your stomach. This is a holding tank. The whole point of your stomach is actually to produce, it has a compound called hydrochloric acid, HCl, and alpha lipoic acid, ALA. So those aren't super important, you just call it ALA, so don't worry about that. But these are really important in fighting microbes, bacteria, parasites, finishing the digestion of heavy complex foods. And this is the thing that we're depleted the most of. So it's a 2-inch mucous membrane that lives inside your stomach, inside your gut lining. And the foods that Carrie Tidwell mentioned, things like gluten, refined sugars, dairy, coffee, wine, and pharmaceuticals are the biggest inhibitor. They deplete this gut lining. And so what happens when we don't have this ALA, the whole purpose of alpha lipoic acid is actually to remove parasites and remove heavy metal toxicity and harmful pathogens, antigens, microbes, or chemical compounds. Like that's its job. It kind of acts like a magnet. It draws it out. It draws it into the liver gallbladder. The liver gallbladder releases that, and we filter through the kidneys and out through the urine. So our body is designed to detox itself. And that's a common argument that you're going to see on the internet. Like, oh, well, you know, our body's just designed to do this, so we don't have to think about it. Not true. So it is designed to do it, but we can't just, it's like going for a run. You can't run forever. Eventually you have to stop. You know, you're going to wear out, you're going to fatigue. So all these foods that we're ingesting that are high acid forming foods and high mucus forming foods are depleting our gut lining and causing cellular acidosis in our body, and they're wearing out our glands and our organs and our tissues and our cells. And so at some point we end up with chronic disease. And Rita's going to touch more on this. So I want to just introduce this topic, but a big, huge problem that we're having, and I'm going to tell you all the common signs of gut health issues, is number 1, brain fog. We talked about that. Number 2, fatigue. Number 3, feeling like you're never satiated. Yes, you can see this recording later. Feeling like you're never satiated, like you are full in your stomach, but you're still looking for more food, or like you're looking for a sweet treat or something because your cells actually did not get what you needed. So digestion maybe didn't happen fully in the mouth, absorption didn't happen in the gut, and then the microvilli that are filled with plaque are not delivering nutrition to the cells because they're not absorbing the nutrition. So I hope that makes sense for the digestion, absorption, utilization, and then elimination piece. And then the second portion of that is when this gut biome comes down and we can't remove bacteria and we can't remove heavy metals, now we are in big trouble. And the gut microbiome is literally like, if you think of a wall or a barrier, I always like to think of it's like protecting the outside world from the inside world. So whatever harmful chemicals we're coming across, like our body is technically designed to detoxify those things and kill those things off. However, the chemicals that we're exposed to and the consistent toxic forming foods that we're exposed to are what's depleting this gut lining. And when we deplete that gut lining, we cause these little holes in the bottom of the gut, and we cause a low oxygenated environment in the gut, and the body can no longer produce hydrochloric acid. So when you don't have proper levels of hydrochloric acid and you don't have proper levels of ALA, alpha lipoic acid, you can't fight bacteria, parasites, microbes, viruses, any of it. So if somebody didn't wash the spinach and you ate lunch and it had some bacteria on it, you've got food poisoning. And most of our guts should be able to just fight that. Like, we shouldn't get food poisoning. So a lot of what we're seeing for chronic disease and like the virus thing that we have going on right now, the pandemic that we have, is because our gut biomes are so shot, because they are so depleted. And a huge part of our depletion is actually coming from chemical toxicity in a compound called glyphosate. And glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, and it's all over everything. It's deemed safe and legal. It's the Monsanto pesticide. It's in our air, it's in our food, it's in our water. We're using something like 560 million pounds of glyphosate a year as a chemical pesticide in the United States. And ingesting this with it, which is on all of your processed foods, we'll answer some of that in a minute, but it's on all of your processed foods, it's on your meats, it's on your grains, everything that you're really bringing in, because your animal livestock is also eating this pesticide-filled grains that they're being fed. And so as you're eating the animals, you're getting it. And as you're eating the processed foods, you're getting it. And as you're eating the produce, you're getting it if you're not eating 100% organic. So there's several factors that go into digestive health, but this is a huge part of it. And so when we deplete the gut biome, whether it's through food or chemical toxicity, we lose our defense to disease, and we actually have basically our gut lining becomes like a permeable membrane, and you'll have this common thing called leaky gut. It's like the new, like, everyone's diagnosed with leaky gut, right? And this is what is causing leaky gut, is one, the acid forming foods we're eating, and two, the chemical pesticides that we're consuming. And so now your stomach lining, there's no defense between your stomach lining and your immune system anymore. And that's where we're getting into trouble. So the foods are coming in, and all those chemicals and pesticides and toxins and acids are making it into the immune system, and it's causing cell mutation and mucus buildup and all sorts of dis-ease in the body. And so this is the environment that we have to rebuild in order to reclaim our health. And as well as, you know, this specific pesticide and this specific gut health issues is directly linked into non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They finally nailed that down and scientifically proven that. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, several other types of cancers and lymphomas, autism, ADHD, IBS, Crohn's, all of these inflammatory conditions. And the reason why is because our body, there's something called acute inflammation and then chronic inflammation. So when we ingest these acids, we get what's called acute inflammation. So the body will respond by inflaming itself in order to rebuild and protect itself. But through continued exposure over and over and over, day in and day out, of acid-forming foods and chemical-based foods, we get into what's called chronic inflammation. And this is when the cells start to break down and degenerate. And that's where we're starting to see the neurological disorders and all sorts of things come out, because your gut microbiome is in charge of producing all of those hormones. If your gut is not in healthy condition, you are not producing hormones properly. So mental health is the main priority your gut health, is the main priority in a healthy mental state. So if you struggle with chronic depression, if you struggle with chronic anxiety, if you struggle with PCOS, is actually directly related to this endocrine disruptor chemical as well. So polycystic ovarian syndrome. If you struggle from getting a common cold like all the time, this is a sign that your gut biome is down, your hormones are not being produced optimally, and therefore your brain cannot feel happy. It's like literally physically impossible for you to feel happy. And there is not anything wrong with you genetically. Like a lot of times, like Carrie said, genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. It's absolutely true. You're not just genetically predisposed to be a sad person. That's not real. Like, you know, you can have lifestyle experiences that are tough. We can go in and out of phases, but we should be able to experience joy. We should be able to sleep well. We should be able to feel vibrant health. And when our gut biome is completely depleted like this, it's impossible. So then we have the chemical pharmaceutical company coming in and giving us a false form of that hormone that we're missing. And if you really get into, write this name down, Dr. Zack Bush. He's a triple board certified medical physician, research scientist, and endocrinology expert. He's amazing, and he's where a lot of us have studied under, as well as Dr. Robert Morse. But he is like taken a lot of the pivotal point on what's happening in our gut biome and understanding that our gut biome is literally an ecosystem. And so everything thrives and survives together. It's like a synergistic relationship. Like we need bacteria. We actually need some healthy levels of candida. We need parasites in certain levels. But the problem that we're having is that we've completely wiped it all out through this oral antibiotic that we're literally like drinking in the air. It's in our running water. It's in all of our food. And so we're constantly wiping out the gut biome over and over and over. And this acute inflammation has now turned chronic. And now we have this permeable membrane in our gut, and everything's dumping into our lymphatic system and into our immune system. And now our cells are breaking down, and we're in a state of cellular degeneration and hormone imbalance. And so we have massive disruption in our endocrine system, and we have massive disruption in our hormone system. And in America, we're seeing around 50% of children with disease, which is crazy. And so he's actually really talked about a lot of this, like if we keep going at this rate that we are at, we will see 1 in 3 children with autism in 20 more years. So at the rate that we're duplicating, and we will see 75% of adults with cancer. So we are in a really dangerous trajectory right now, and we have to create permanent change. And so I hope that's helpful. I don't want to step on Rita's topic because she's so passionate about this. So I'm going to let her get into the regeneration of the soil and like the gut microbiome and all that. But really just understanding from start to finish. Digestion starts in your mouth. We are primates. That's our species type. So we have ptyalin and ptyalin in our saliva that break down glucose, fructose, and galactose, which means fruits, vegetables, and mom's milk sugar. And then we have ptyalin produced by our teeth that breaks down complex fatty chains and more complex starches like wild rice, seeds, nuts, avocados, etc. That is what we are designed to live on. It's our primal foods, and that's how we know what our primal food should be, and that a plant-based lifestyle is actually how we thrive. Is because right in our mouth, it tells us this is what you can do with what you've got. And then the food goes into our esophagus and it goes into the duodenum, and this is a holding tank. When it goes into the duodenum, the pancreas secretes insulin and amylase to further break down the food, and then it releases into the stomach, and here's where our problems have started to begin. So in the stomach is where the hydrochloric acid and the alpha lipoic acid decide what's bad in here, what's good, what needs to go, what needs to stay. If you're in a healthy functioning system, they finish the breakdown of food, and then they send the food into the intestinal tract, the small intestine. And that's the 15 to 20 feet of nutrient absorption space. So our whole tract is 36 to 40 feet. But there's intestinal tract, there's digestive tract, there's different sections here that we have to talk about. But the 15 to 20 feet of nutrient absorption happen in the small intestine, and that's where the hundreds of microvilli are supposed to be free and picking up nutrients and delivering them to the cells. But through this continuous consumption of plaque-forming foods, mucus-forming foods, the microvilli get locked to the wall and they cannot absorb nutrition. And when you're not absorbing or breaking down our food right, then it's just sitting in the colon and we're not eliminating either. And Carrie already said what we don't eliminate, we accumulate. So what happens is that with that stool that's sitting in the bowels, we actually start to reabsorb those toxins back into the system. And that's a danger as well. So that's all I'm going to talk about right now, because this is a huge subject, but just understanding that when you heal your gut, you heal your brain. Yes, you can heal your anxiety. Anxiety is actually directly related to this hormone imbalance. And the one thing I do want to touch on is a lot of those foods that we mentioned, like complex starches, gluten, sugars, meats, etc. is caused by, specifically, we're not eating the right type of food for our species type. And so our body doesn't know how to recognize it. And when we can't recognize a food, we actually use our adrenal glands in order to help the breakdown of that food. And so we start producing something called corticosteroid. And that steroid creates like a histamine reaction. It's an inflammatory reaction in your body, but it puts your body into fight or flight. So we can actually be living in a constant state of fight or flight just because we're eating like crap. And so your body thinks like, I'm being attacked by a bear, but really you're just eating a bowl of rice. And that's when we're getting into trouble. And so this constant state of fight or flight really wears down your adrenal glands. And when the adrenal glands get worn down, we have chronic anxiety and random anxiety. Like it'll go from maybe a situation makes you anxious to all of a sudden you're sitting in the car having a good day and you have a panic attack. And this is because your body just trips into fight or flight mode and doesn't know why it's there. And this is all coming from the lack of health in the gut biome. So anxiety, depression, lack of hormones, infertility, all of it is caused by an imbalanced gut biome because the ecosystem is disrupted and the hormones are not producing properly. So I hope that's an okay summary for you. I was trying to be faster since we had some time constraints. I'm going to pass it over to Rita right now. All right.
Yay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Carrie, for your beautiful words of wisdom and passion. I can just hear your love for this subject and your voice, and just thank you for all that you're sharing. And I just wanted to ask everybody a quick question to kind of bring it all together. So our gut lining is only, just tiny. So if it's our protection from the outside world, how is it that it's so thin? Like, is that some kind of mess up in our biology? What's going on there? And I want to say that no, like we're part of nature. Our biology is amazing. Millions of different things are happening. And the reason this gut microbiome is so thin is because we're meant to be interacting with our ecosystem. And our gut microbiome actually repopulates in 3 days. And it's because we're breathing in the air, we're breathing in the soils. And that's why when you go on vacation and you're in a completely new environment, after 3 you have a whole new, and the microbiome is interacting with the microbiome of the earth, of the environment, and that's repopulating our gut and changing our serotonin levels. As Carrie was saying, 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut microbiome. And so this beautiful relationship between humans and the ecosystem, and we're actually dependent upon our ecosystem, reliant upon our ecosystem. And we know that the healthier our ecosystem is, the more biodiverse our ecosystem is, the healthier we are, and vice versa. And so today I want to talk a little bit about soil health and history. Carrie touched briefly on glyphosate, but how did we get to this point where 1 in 30 kids are experiencing autism? Back in the 60s, it used to be 1 in 5,000 kids. And then now we're at 1 in 4 children are experiencing allergies. 30 years ago, allergies was hardly a thing. There was hardly even any peanut allergies. Now if you go into the schools, it's like there's allergies to almost everything. And now we're at a point where 1 in 2 people are experiencing major depression. So what's going on here? And what's this relationship between our gut microbiome and these chronic diseases that we're seeing? So over the last 20 years, we've seen a doubling in cancers. And if we continue in this same pattern that we're going right now we have 50% of sperm is sterile. So if it doubles again in 20 years, we're going to be completely infertile. We're going to not be able to repopulate as a species or exist. In multiple communities, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's has increased by 10 to 15% just since 2012. So these are pretty alarming numbers, and I can we can definitely see that correlation between what's happening in our environment and what's happening in our internal ecosystem. So I just want to bring it back through a little bit of history, going back to the Great Dust Bowl, when we lost a lot of our topsoil health, and we had to actually start importing foods for the first time because people were starving. And I remember my grandpa telling me an amazing story during the of his experience during the Great Depression. It was so cloudy because of all of the dust that he couldn't even see 3 feet in front of him. And his brother actually got lost 3 feet outside of their house, and they could hear him walking back and forth across the porch, like, hi, help, where are you guys? And the whole family, they could go out and reach him because literally couldn't see a few inches in front of their faces. So they grabbed his brother and brought him back in. And so that kind of was the start of that topsoil loss. And then we start getting into World War II. And during that time, we actually started growing victory gardens. And 45% of our food consumption, we were growing in our backyard, which is amazing. And then after World War II, we actually had this complete glut of petroleum. We had so much excess petroleum that was going to all of the warfare and to the tanks and the airplanes and all of it. And as soon as the war stopped, they didn't know what to do with this glut of petroleum, so they turned it into a chemical fertilizer and put it into our soils, and that's what we know as NPK. And so we went from the victory gardens in World War II, and now as we move more into later time, as we get into the 60s, we start the Green Revolution. And the Green Revolution is not what you think. It's actually the birth of chemical farming. Does make the plants really green. That's why it's called the Green Revolution. So we started to tell farmers, hey, look, you don't have to go back to your ancient traditions. Those are old school. You don't have to worry about crop rotation or, tilling the soil, all of these things that were necessary and important. You don't have to worry about those, and you'll just can fertilize, and that will take care of your plants. And so through that, we started seeing the plants getting really green, but what was missing was the nutrients. And so now we have nutrient deficient plants. And so the plant's immune function gets hit really hard. And all of a sudden the plants start to experience the attack from different bugs and pests, and weeds are growing because they're trying to remineralize the soil. And so from there, we introduce herbicides, and that was the first introduction of glyphosate, or Roundup as we know it, the most commonly used pesticide. And so that actually was used most to start in people's backyards. Just consumers, everyday people, were spraying dandelions. And what wasn't told to us is that this is a water-soluble toxin. And our planet is 70% water, through the clouds, through the air we're breathing, through the water tables. And so it's actually impossible to get rid of unless we stop spraying it. And then there's microfungi and bacteria that can start to break it down within about 50 years after we stop spraying. But what this means is it's going straight from our yards into the water table. And we spray about 6 billion pounds of glyphosate into the environment every single year. And what it is it's actually an antibiotic. It kills off the microfungi, the microbacteria, not only in our soils, and we'll talk about how important those are, but also that's getting in our water systems and getting in our food, and you can't wash it off. It's in 75% of our air, 75% of the water we drink, and that's getting introduced into our system. So we are becoming sterile environments with these antibiotics. And studies have shown even one round of pharmaceutical antibiotics increases depression, major depression, by 25%, and multiple rounds increase it by 80%. the microfungi and the microbacteria and their importance. And what they do is they actually break down the nutrients in the soil and create enzymes that allow for the absorption of nutrients and also the absorption of our essential amino acids. So we have 9 essential amino acids, and they're essential because our bodies don't produce them. We have to get them from food. And because of the shikimate pathway that is being blocked in the plants because of glyphosate, we're not able, it's blocking our receptors, which from the our internal microbacteria and fungi that produces the enzymes to create and receive those proteins. That pathway is blocked. And so now our building blocks of life, we're not able to absorb because of glyphosate. So that's just crazy. So what we're starting to see is all of this rapid aging. You know, we're seeing 4- and 5-year-olds who have the cellular age of a 65-year-old. And it's because our actual physiology is getting so weakened. So that weakens the gut, and we get that leaky gut. And then from there, it also weakens the kidneys, the tubes of the kidneys, and that starts permeating and leaking. And then we're not able to detoxify. And then it also starts creating leaky veins and blood vessels, and that's leaking. And all of a sudden now we're in the blood-brain barrier, and that's why with this introduction of glyphosate, we've seen this huge, massive spike in neurological disorders, because once it hits into the blood vessels, it goes into the blood-brain barrier, and now all of a sudden the nervous system is under attack. So we're seeing Parkinson's increase in males and Alzheimer's increase in women, and all of the other things, autism and all this happening. So how do we reconcile all this? How do we deal with this? Because this is obviously like the foundation of our building blocks of how we survive is being compromised. And so Mary's going to get into some solutions for us, which is amazing. But I also just want to talk about briefly, because this is so fascinating to me, the cellular network communication. So our cells communicate to each other, just like we communicate to each other on cell phones through wireless connection. Our cells communicate to each other in the exact same way. And what's responsible for that is our microbiome. So the microfungi and the microbacteria that are in our guts are communicating to the mitochondria, which are in our cells, and that allows for cellular communication. And when the mitochondria break down, when the microbiome breaks down, we lose the cellular communication. And when that happens, cellular isolation happens, and things like chronic disease and cancer happens. And a cancer cell is just a highly damaged cell that has lost communication with all of the other cells in the body. Normally, a damaged cell is able to go through a thing called autophagy, where it creates cell suicide. It kills itself off, and then the body creates a new stem cell, a new healthy cell. But when the cells are not in communication with each other, the cell no longer can kill itself off, and then instead it duplicates, because it's the only way it knows how to survive. So it duplicates and duplicates and duplicates and duplicates, and that's how we get growth patterns of cancer and tumors and all of these things. So the microbacteria are responsible for the cell communication in our body, the health of our mitochondria, which is what create the cellular ATP. People with cancers and such have a cell energy of around 3.75. Healthy people have cellular energy around 8. So we have to have that health of our mitochondria in order to have the health of the cellular ATP and cellular energy. So it all comes back to this amazing ecosystem that is not only inside of us, but in our earth and our relationship to that. So I'll pass it off to Mary Beth so that she can continue on this conversation. But thank you for listening in. And I do see a question: is there a way to measure cellular energy? Yes, different. Some doctors are measuring this. So yeah, Dr. Zack Bush is actually measuring this in his clinic. So it's, yeah, check it out.
Hi, I'm just going to pop in. Thank you guys all for being here. And I'm really excited about all this information. And I just want to take it to more of like a visual. We've been a lot thinking about this in our head, and I just want to take it to a visual. So if you want to close your eyes, you don't have to, but I just want you to imagine the most fertile, lush, biodiverse environment. You can close your eyes. Think about the ecosystem, think about the plants that are there, think about the tiny bacteria that we can't even see, the worms, the fungi, the mushrooms growing off the trees. Think about that smell when it first rains and you smell that humic, that life, those minerals that are in the soil. And take that environment and transfer it into your gut. And that's what we want our guts to be like. Our guts are directly correlated to our environments, and they need a very diverse environment to thrive. Our gut is just a biome. It's just a microbiome like our planet. And our gut is our largest contact with our environment. So even more so than our skin, we have much larger surface area in our gut than our skin. So our gut is our largest contact to our environment. And what's happening nowadays is when we weaken the diversity, we begin to become vulnerable to disease. So if you think about bacterial overgrowths like Candida, this is basically happening in the body because it's a weed, like in the soil. When the nutrients become devoid in the soil, when the biodiversity is non-existent anymore, the weeds actually come in because they're the strongest survivors. They come in to go dig deep into the roots of the soil and pull up minerals from deep within and try to repopulate the diversity of the ecosystem. And so when we get an overgrowth of pathogens or candidas or bad bacterias, this is what's happening. They're basically like weeds showing us that, hey, your microbiome is devoid of diversity. And so we're going to take over and try to build this back into how it's supposed to be. But what ends up happening is we just become vulnerable and more likely to get different diseases. So we want a really, really diverse gut microbiome, and we don't want to monoculture it. Just like your garden, if you want to have a ton of different plants that attract different bugs and bring different minerals and different vitamins, if you just grow one plant species together, you notice they all experience disease from certain pests. So you have to have lots of different diversity to combat the different pests that comes in. And we actually do want a good amount of different types of viruses and pathogens and fungi in our gut. It's just when one starts to take over that we get problems. So that's just a little visual I wanted you guys to think of. And one quote I want to take from Zack Bush is, "The secret is in the soil." The secret to longevitous health is in the soil that our food is grown in. It's in the soil of our gut microbiome. And today, 80% of Americans have gut issues. And I know Rita touched on this, like 1 in 4 kids have allergies, 1 in 2 people experience depression and sleep disorders. And it's all because the soil of our gut is being depleted and monocultured. So Rita talked about this. When we begin to sterilize in our environment, like with glyphosate, our food becomes sterile. And so the food can no longer get minerals and nutrients out of the soil. The food becomes sterile, and then we're eating that food. Our body can't digest any of the nutrients because they're sterile, and we become sterile, and we become more prone to disease and the like. So I think something that really is astonishing to me is about 7.7 million pounds of glyphosate is put in our soils yearly, but even more so, 30 million pounds is put into the corn and the wheat that is fed to the pigs and the chickens that people consume. So this sterile chemical is highly present in the foods we eat and in our soils. So it's coming at us from all angles, like Rita was suggesting. And when you get stressed food, you get stressed humans, is what Carrie was touching on in our mental capacities. So the number one thing that glyphosate in this chemical does is it kills nutrients. And your gut, basically what Rita was talking about, you get the nutrients, the microorganisms, break down the nutrients, and then they send everything to the liver to break it down into amino acids, HCl, these different things, so that our body can absorb them. And then from there, that energy from the food is sent to the mitochondria to create cellular energy, optimal cellular function. But when you are bringing in plants and foods that don't even have the nutrients to begin with, this process cannot happen, and the communication highways get totally like X'd out. And so that's why we have problems with the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, because these communication highways aren't working anymore. And so it really does come down to the soil, why we're experiencing a lot of these issues. And what Rita touched on this as well is the blocking of amino acids. So you do need some essential amino acids like tryptophan to make serotonin. You need tyrosine to make dopamine. And so when you're introducing chemicals that inhibit these amino acids from being formed, then you're affecting your serotonin levels, your dopamine levels, your mood, your energy, and all the like. And as Carrie touched on, what gets hit first when this gut lining is depleted is our immune system. So 70 to 60% of our immune system is right behind that thin lining that Rita was touching on. And it's this, the lining is the thickness of one cell. If you think of our skin is the thickness of about 50 to 100 cells. The immune system is under attack, and we start to get chronic inflammation, leaky gut, autoimmune, many different things. And the body can no longer really detect what is a good thing and what is a bad thing. So the immune system just begins attacking itself. So this is all a lot of information, and it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do, right? But there are things we can do. So that's really what I wanted to touch on, is some solutions for really how you can get to the root of refertilizing that soil within your gut. And number one, you hear me talk about this a lot, is just breathe. Breathe when you're eating. Primarily, this is because the digestive system is directly correlated to the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is our relax and rest nervous system. So when our digestive system is relaxed when we're eating, we're way more likely to absorb nutrients. And even engaging in your food, like smelling about to trigger the saliva so that we start to digest more. And so one of the best things you can do is just like have time to be with your food and enjoy it and be relaxed. If we're stressed out when we're eating, our body's not going to absorb as much. So that's one simple thing you can do. Another thing, eat raw foods. Eat a lot of raw foods because they contain the essential enzymes that help with the hydrochloric acid, and they help stimulate the microbiome, mainly because they're so packed full of micronutrients. And so polyphenols are something that are amazing you can introduce into your diet, and that's basically just antioxidants. And so an antioxidant, what it is it attaches to an oxygen molecule and an RNA molecule. An RNA molecule is that molecule that brings that cellular energy to the mitochondria. So for instance, kids have a ton of RNA molecules in their body, and that's why you can see them like fall down a flight of stairs and jump back up, and they repair really, really quickly. But as we age, we start to disrupt these communication pathways, and we get less oxygen into the body. Our RNA molecules are far and few between, and then you see someone maybe break a hip, and it's all downhill from there. So the more of these antioxidants, the more of this RNA we can get into the mitochondria, and these more oxygen we can get into the body through raw foods and micronutrients, the quicker your body is able to repair, and the quicker that gut lining can start to form tight junctions again versus loose junctions when it's damaged or depleted. So some things that have a lot of polyphenols, a lot of antioxidants, go for your fruits. You've got your oranges, your apples, your peaches, your grapefruits, your blueberries, your pomegranates, raspberries, black elderberries, black currants, strawberries, apricots. These things are all really high in polyphenols, as well as like your beans and your nuts and your vegetables. So introducing those more into your diet can be really helpful. Another thing to really help with the gut microbiome diversity is to decrease processed foods. So basically processed foods are more or less sterile foods. They've been processed so many times that the bacteria and fungi and all that are basically eliminated. And then you get an excess of, say, processed sugar, and it begins to monoculture the gut and create a lack of diversity. So trying to get those things out of your diet, specifically things that can help with that transition is aloe vera. If you can increase aloe vera in your system, it actually helps speed up the duplication of healthy cell replication. And so that's an amazing thing to start introducing into your diet to help start repairing that gut microbiome and speeding up that repair process. Also, we've talked about our amino acids, our essential amino acids, how that is so important, but in particular, L-glutamine is one that repairs gut villi, and you can find that in your cabbage, in your spinach, your beans. So introducing essential amino acids, making sure you're getting all these. And then the largest component that I think is the most important for your gut health is just get back in nature. As Rita was talking about, we absorb the nature around us. So after it rains, go outside, smell those smells, get those minerals in your body. Go build, if you're concerned about all this glyphosate and everything, the best thing you can do is have your own garden. Get your hands in the dirt. Your skin is going to absorb the soil, and it's going to trickle into your gut microbiome and create diversity. Really having not doing the same thing every single day can also be a big tip. So if you go on the same walk and eat the same food day in and day out, again, that's a type of monoculturing. So you want to mix it up. You want to go on different hikes. You want to, eat different foods at different times, mix it up to create that diversity of a gut microbiome. And then lastly, there are some things that you can incorporate that we all use, and we help people, guide people through the use of to really increase this repair in the gut microbiome. And one is, I highly recommend checking out Dr. Zack Bush's Restore product that goes in and actually helps to re-signal the communication highways of the RNA. But another one that we all use and help people with is Biomedic. And it is proven to pull glyphosate out of the body, 75% of glyphosate out of the body, and then replenish the gut microbiome with naturally occurring substances like fulvic acid, probiotics, and humic ore. And then we also, again, the amino acids and the polyphenols, and the micronutrients. So if you're interested in how do I start incorporating more of this into my being and get support in doing this, we do lead these transformation groups where we do them for 30 to 60 to 90 days. We have an ongoing one right now. And basically the main reason for holding these is to help people get back to the center of their health, help people restore that gut microbiome. And we do introduce products like Biomedic and essential amino acids and a very micronutrient rich shake. And then we give a lot of guidance around how to increase your raw food intake. We give grocery lists, and we have a lot of videos that go in depth about the different functions of the organs and touch deeper on some of the things we've talked about today. So if you're like, wow, I've learned a lot from this talk, I want to learn more, I really want to get in there and start working on my health now, you can reach out to any of us, or you can reach out to the person who invited you to this talk, and they can guide you, let you know how to get into one of our transformations, and really just start today, because it is really important that we got to start cleaning up our soil and diversifying our soil in our gut microbiome and in our world today, so that we can sustain for the next generations. So I'm really grateful that you guys were all here today, and thank you for dealing with our technical difficulties in the beginning. I really appreciate you sticking with us. And we might have a little opening for question and answer if everyone can stay. Yeah,
I have about 15 minutes. And I just wanted to say really quick, one thing I didn't get to share, I was just trying to make sure that all of the ladies got in here. And we all have such a powerful story, but just understanding that you can heal and regenerate anything in your body once you get your body into the right environment. And that's the power that you need to hold. And we have to understand that suffering is completely optional. that when we get back into synchronicity with our environment, that we just heal. So if you're experiencing chronic constipation or diarrhea or undigested foods in your stools, these are all signs that the organs have really taken a deep beating, especially the gut biome and the pancreas and the adrenal glands are all associated with those digestive issues. And so my journey all started in this passion with having Hashimoto, lupus, chronic adrenal fatigue, and fibromyalgia. And I was diagnosed with all of those, and those are all considered non-curable. And so through regenerative detox and through this lifestyle, I was able to completely regenerate my health. Mary and Rita both have similar stories, and so does Carrie Tidwell. So we just want to offer you a little bit of that personal experience that we actually have gone through this journey. I have been at the depths of hell with my health and come out the other side vibrant, and on my second like back-to-back pregnancy where I was considered infertile or unexplained infertility and spontaneous miscarriage. I had 5 miscarriages and then just couldn't get pregnant. And once I healed my gut biome and healed the inflammation in my body and started to remove this waste out of my body, everything started thriving. And I was able to conceive a child with ease now. And I have a 1.5, almost 2-year-old, and I'm, I don't know, 8 months pregnant now. So yeah, I'm 8 months pregnant right now. And so I just want to offer that nugget of hope to people. And then like Mary was saying, the cleanse we are offering is incredible because it's so complete. The specific, she talked about the biomedic, but we use amino acids, which are all 9 essential amino acids for that repair and rebuild. That's part of your morning regimen. And then we have a superfood shake every day that is actually coming from some of the most nutrient dense soil in the United States. And they're using green manure and ion minerals in the soil, and you're getting 96% of your daily nutrients in that shake, so that you're not worrying about like, well, is the soil I'm eating this cabbage from nutrient dense? You know it is. So it's really getting this diverse microbiome. It's repopulating the gut biome with good bacteria, and then the biomedics removing the bad. It's removing the glyphosate and the metals and remineralizing the gut. And then we use high polyphenols and antioxidants with our cherry juice. So that's kind of our system with the detox. It's really accessible for all people, and we love supporting people through it. You will be entered into our private transformation group, and I don't need to talk more about that because that was already reiterated. So we just want to open up for everyone for Q&A for a few minutes here. Yes, it's available in the UK, whoever asked that. It's just ordered through a different website, but we can help you with that. Anyone that brought you to this call has a $50 gift card for you. So if you want to start with the cleanse, that's our best recommendation. But if you want to start with just like a product or 2, we can also help you pick what's best and highest priority for you. So anybody have any specific questions, feel free to unmute yourself and to chat with us on, you know, maybe something you've been dealing with chronically, and we can answer with some of our expertise.
Hi, just wanted to touch briefly on a little bit more solutions and then hear more questions. You can bring this conversation to your town hall. So Farmers Footprint is one of the main nonprofit communities that are really working to restore the health of the soils, which is actually restoring the lives of our farmers. And without our farmers, we don't have an economy, we don't have health, we don't have anything. So this is a movement, a grassroots movement, and I really recommend that you bring the video to your town hall and have community viewings of it. So just go to farmersfootprint.com and you can see the whole video and get the package and the kit so that you can actually share this with more people, because we have to get this word out there. Russia is actually going to be totally GMO free by 2030, I believe.
100% organic.
2025.
Yeah,
2025. Yeah. And then we're so far behind. We're not even in 10, you know, it would take only 16% people to go organic for GMOs like Monsanto, Bayer to fully collapse and not be able to spray these chemicals and pesticides anymore. Right now we're at like 4 or 5%, which is a big jump from the 1% we were at maybe 5 years ago. So that's just another solution that you can do at the community level to really share this information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Rita. That's nice to know that other countries are doing that and we can follow. And another thing I wanted to touch on is a lot of us think about cleaning our car or our house, but we don't think about cleaning our internal terrain and environment. And are we a host for that to thrive? And well, I lost my train of thought for a second. But so it's really, really important to vote with your dollar and maybe pay a little extra for organic, or support your local farmers market or people who are doing these regenerative practices. So just get to know your local farmer, plant food in your backyard if you can. I think that's number one. And if we can't grow our own stuff, then supporting the local farmers and people who are doing these regenerative practices with the soil is so important. And taking the time, if no one has ever cleaned out your body, we need to clean out this internal terrain so that we can function optimally. And that's what we all found, was once we cleansed and got the waste out, hydrated and alkalized, things just functioned way more optimally in our body. And just like a car, you don't want to put in dirty fuel and fuel that's not good for that car, because it'll start to have symptoms and warning signs to break down. Same thing with our body. So it could be digestive stuff, it could be allergies, it could be all these different kinds of things. And so really listening to your body's messages and hearing what that's saying to do to help bring your body into your next best level of health. And that's what we're so excited to support people in, because it can be confusing and there's like an art to cleansing and detox that can be a little tricky and scary, and everyone is coming at a different level, and we have a passion for like meeting you where you're at. No matter what level you're on, you can always take it to your next best level at a pace that feels comfortable.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have a question. I have like chronic, it's not ear infections. I had them a lot as a child. And I never had tubes put in, but recently I've had a lot of ear pain and just like itchiness where I just want to, like, it drives me insane. And I've had them looked at and they said that like my ear canals are straight instead of like a way that they're supposed to drain. And I was wondering, every once in a while, one will really hurt and will go down my throat, and the other will hurt. And then one will itch like horribly. And they gave me prednisone. I never took it, but I was like, wow, that seems extreme. And they want eventually to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I was just wondering if this will probably help that, or what that would.
Yes, I can totally speak on that, because I suffered with chronic ear infections as a child, and now I've not had any like close relatedness to any ear infection. It's all about the congestion of our lymphatic system, which is our body's main immune system. And you see everybody so concerned about like hand sanitizer and wearing a mask and sanitizing the outside, but no one's thinking about the internal terrain. And so we really want to clean this internal terrain. And so if you're getting more ear infections, you don't just want to treat that, you want to get to what's causing that to happen. What are you a host for that bacteria to thrive and cause that pain? And so if you've never done a cleanse, I highly
I'm on day 17.
Oh, you are? Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, getting that eliminative channel to the lymph system, to the kidneys opened up is really, really important. And then you can, chat with us too about more of a specific protocol to help you, but making sure that eliminative channel to that kidneys is opened, and there's ways you can check for that, and we can talk about that later too. But yes, definitely cleaning up the lymphatic system helps a lot, and getting the mucus and waste out of the body.
Sorry. I have a question about, like, because I suffer from like food sensitivities, like it just within the past year. And so I was wondering, with like sometimes like my stomach would feel weird, especially after eating certain foods high in sugar. And so I was wondering, and so this kind of relates to my next question, like many, some say, I get like mixed messages with Candida, like some say that you should eat fruits, and some say like you shouldn't eat fruits because it's high in sugar. But in the diet that we're doing, we're eating a lot of fruits. So I guess, can you expound on that, and maybe the reason why when I eat certain things, I feel kind of sensitive, even more sensitive to chemicals than usual too.
Yeah, I can touch on that. That's a really good sign that you're noticing that, because one of the things we can do for our gut microbiome is if we're eating foods that are making us feel upset, it means that there's something going on with the bacteria and the microbes, and there's not enough beneficial bacteria in there to fight off whatever is making that bloating or that, that stomach ache or whatever is going on. So the difference with the fruit sugars and the processed sugars is that fruit actually contains a really high nutrient dense amount of vitamins and some minerals. And so that's what we need to replenish that gut microbiome, is a lot of micronutrients. And so yes, first we need to get the candida back to par. And that's where some parasitical cleansing and some, definitely getting off the starches and the processed sugars is really going to help, and eating very, very, very alkaline. So high, lots of veggies. And then as you can take a little break from fruit just to get that balance, but then you are definitely going to want to reintroduce the fruit for sure, because of that diversity that it's going to bring to the microbiome. So the main thing to focus on is basically the elimination of the processed foods, the processed sugars, and increasing hydration and alkalization. So that's your veggies, and then fruits definitely. And aloe, again, it can be something that could be really beneficial for you. So your body is most likely just having, basically we're like a jar. We can only take so much, right? We can take the chemicals, you can put all that in there, but once that jar gets full, we get full. And then that's where we start to see these symptoms. So the fact that it's popping up in the past year is just a signifier that your tank's getting pretty full and you've got to start eliminating now. So again, just what Carrie touched on, cleansing the lymphatic system through hydration with fruits and veggies, and getting those kidneys to eliminate is going to help with that repopulation of good bacteria.
Mm-hmm. And also, that's showing that there is some permeability in the gut, most likely, because you are experiencing some allergies and some bloating and different symptoms. So that gut microbiome repair, as Mary is talking about, is just so crucial. And as we were talking about the cell communication to each other through that mitochondrial production of that seed. So go for the non-sweet fruits. They're simple sugars. They're not complex sugars. They're actually absorbed directly into your cells. And when they're eaten on their own, help to clean up and repopulate the healthy microbiome. So yeah.
And remember, anything with a seed is technically a fruit. So your non-sweet fruits are like your cucumbers, your peppers, your tomatoes. Mm-hmm. Those are technically fruits. So in the beginning, stick with the non-sweet. And then eventually, as you start to gain more of a balance, you can go up to experience the other ones.
So how do I know when to introduce the fruits again then?
It'll basically, it's one of those things where you want to monitor. When you eat something, that's why it's nice to eat one thing at a time when you're in your state, see how your body reacts. If you're still getting adverse reactions, that means there's still some imbalance happening and we got to go deeper. So that's the thing with healing, is you just got to introduce things slowly and be really receptive to how your body's responding to those things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add. Oh, sorry. One more thing I'll add to that is making sure we don't eat fruit on top of a meal. A lot of times when we start adding in more fresh foods, we don't want to eat fruit on top of things, because it will cause fermentation, and that will invite more candida and fungus. And that's what I experienced growing up. I always had to have something sweet after I ate. I was addicted to Kit Kat bars and then chocolate, dark chocolate, all that processed sugar. And I was just causing more fermentation, more candida overgrowth in my own body. And so eating fruit first is really, really important, because it digests quickly.
Exactly. And I'll just wrap it up just because I have another call. But I just wanted to say, that environment inside your body, like fruits produce cellular ATP, which is cellular energy, and that is our life force. And so we need to not fear fruit, but really to embrace it. Embrace fruits, embrace vegetables, And then understand that if you're not healing just on your own with fruits and veggies, you probably need to go deeper. You may need to introduce something like the Biomedic to remove glyphosate, or maybe work with some herbs that will start cleaning the gut, cleaning the kidneys, and really kill that environment off. A white tongue in the morning is a sign that you're dealing with candida. Sugar and starch cravings are sugar, starch, heavy fats, refined oils is all a sign that you are still in a very fungal dominant environment, because the fungus feeds off of sugars. So you'll have high cravings for those foods. So as that environment is dying off, as the microbial environment and the parasitic environment is dying off, you'll have even more intense cravings temporarily, just a couple of days as they're leaving. And that's a sign that your body is healing, that your body is leaving that environment, and that they are getting out. So really stick through those intense cravings and keep on your course and use herbs to kill them and really rebuild the gut. So I'm going to wrap it up just because I have a couple other meetings today, and we went over just with thank you for your time and your curiosity on this topic. We'll be doing one class a month. Only 100 people allowed in, so please get enrolled for the next class if you want to be. I believe our next class is specifically nervous system, and taking a deeper dive into that and a couple other topics as well. And then whoever brought you to this class, if you're interested in joining our collective group supported cleanse with like live Q&A weekly Zooms, please send a message to whoever brought you here, and we'll get you information. And then we will send the replay for this recording out, and you're welcome to share that with friends and family if you would like. All right, let's see. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Love you all so much. Namaste.